Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/Nerdery and Murdery. That's audibletrial.com/Nerdery and Murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/Nerdery and Murdery. That's betterhelp.com/Nerdery and Murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
Robin, the hooded man. Robin, the hooded man.
Yay, something else I don't know what the fuck we're talking about. Welcome to episode 137 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 137. I'm Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and the lows, and the good and the bad, and the up and down, the nerd and the murd. I did want to give an announcement to our listeners, in case you weren't aware, those who listen to us on Google Podcasts. Google Podcasts is going away. So,
is it really?
Yeah. I really haven't looked up the why or anything like that, but if you listen to us on Google Podcasts, you will need to find another platform to listen to. We are available pretty much on every major podcast platform, so just be aware of that if this is where you listen.
Quite a few minor ones as well. Yeah,
and I don't remember a date that it said, but I just saw a thing on that the other day. I told you over text, but I was so excited. I got my first birdie playing golf on Friday. It was awesome. I hit a great drive, maybe 20 yards from the pin. Then I chipped it, and I was a foot from the cup. And so I got a birdie on a par 4 that was great. But no one was there to watch it. I was playing by myself.
Well, I'm proud of you. I'm proud. If no one else is, I'm proud of you. Way to birdie, sir.
I played yesterday. I'm so sore today. I am just so sore. I'm playing again today as well. I got a tee time at 1, so you can't talk long.
Okay, I shan't. There is one thing I did want to bring up beforehand.
Yeah.
Also a sports-related thing. Fantasy Football Fundamentals, A Beginner's Guide to Gridiron Glory. It was published by our friend Randy.
I think
You
I
can
think
go.
it comes out tomorrow.
Yes, yes. He showed it to me last night. I'm like, I'm gonna plug this tomorrow. He's like, okay. So Randy Pollard wrote a book.
Yeah, I'm gonna be looking forward to seeing that on Amazon tomorrow. Apparently, I need to buy that guide since I ended up in last this year.
Oh no!
Dead last.
Dead last. So you're getting the trophy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bad trophy.
The bad trophy.
Oh God, terrible. Anyway. All right, Zig. So whatever this is we're talking about, I will let you take over on the nerdy side of the house.
Awesome. Today we're going to talk about Robin of Sherwood.
Well, I figured it was Robin Hood. Just never heard of this.
Okay, over here it was called Robin Hood. It was a television series. It was on PBS. Before that, it was on Showtime. It's a British television series based on the legend of Robin Hood. It was created by Richard Carpenter. It was produced by HTV in association with Goldcrest. It ran from 28th April 1984 to 28th June 1986 on the ITV network. In the U.S., it was shown on premium cable TV channel Showtime, later on PBS. It was also syndicated in the early 1990s under the title Robin Hood, which is what most of us knew it as, just Robin Hood. The show starred Michael Praed and Jason Connery as two different incarnations of the title character. And unlike previous adaptations of the Robin Hood legend, Robin of Sherwood combined a gritty, authentic production design with elements of real-life history, 20th century fiction, and pagan mythology. Robin of Sherwood has been described by historian Stephen Knight as the most innovative and influential version of the myth in recent times. The series is also notable for its musical score by the Celtic band Clannad, which won a BAFTA award. A video game adaptation, Robin of Sherwood, The Touchstone of Rhiannon, was released in 1985. Richard Carpenter had previously worked with producer Phil Knight on two other dramas involving historical adventurers, Dick Turpin from 79 to 82 and Smuggler in 1981. For the next project, Carpenter and Knight decided to have their production company, Gaetatarn, do an adaptation of the Robin Hood legend. With the aid of television producer Sidney Cole, Carpenter and Knight were able to create a production deal for the show. Goldcrest Films, the U.S. network, Showtime, HTV, and Gaetatarn agreed to fund the series. Robin of Sherwood was more expensive than Carpenter and Knight's previous series. Each episode of Robin of Sherwood cost around £500,000 to film. £500,000 in 1984 was quite a chunk of change. Filming of Robin of Sherwood began in 83. The show premiered in 84 on ITV and Showtime in the U.S. There were 3 series composed of 2-hour opening episodes and a 24 1-hour long episodes. So they did 3 seasons, but the 3rd season was the same length as the first 2. So a lot of people break it down into 4 seasons. And the pilot sometimes screened as 2 1-hour episodes. The episodes composed the Sword of Wayland were transmitted as 1 episode in the UK on their original screening in 1985. The show was shot on film and almost entirely on location, mostly in the northeast and southwest of England. HTV West Bristol was the base of operations, and most of the filming was done in and around Bristol and its surrounding counties, primarily located where the Blaze Castle Estate and Vassals Park. Some of the forest scenes were shot nearby Bradford on Avon. Robin of Sherwood is one of the most influential treatments of the core Robin Hood legend since the classic film, The Adventures of Robin Hood. It featured a realistic period setting and introduced the character of a Saracen outlaw. Carpenter also added fantasy elements to the story, which had not appeared in previous TV versions of the legend. These include Robin's supernatural mentor, Herne the Hunter, Robin's magic sword, Albion, and appearances by black magicians and demons. So there were 2 actors who played the Robin character. Well, they were two different characters, but they played the Robin Hood role. Um, Michael Praed played Robin of Locksley, and Jason uh, Connery played Robert of Huntingdon.
Sean Connery's
Both,
son.
yes, Sean Connery's son. Um, and again, the or the Jason Connery, sorry, um, did only did one season, but it was the same length as the first two seasons, so it's generally broken up and they each did two because they did the same amount of episodes. Um, because the first season was 12 episodes, second season were 12 episodes, third season was 24 episodes. So, 12 and 12. Um, this show, this show was real big in the theatrical community. Um, the Renaissance Fair nerdery, as it
Hmm.
were, um, because of the way they showed it. And then in the early 90s, we had several Robin Hood films
Yeah.
that basically were cribbed off this show. Um, the thing I liked best about it is they brought in a bunch of Gaelic and Anglo-Saxon mythology as part of the overall narrative. Robin was working with Herne the Hunter, who was directing them to, to basically fight for good and fight for the people. So it was more of an adventure show. It's the first time they brought in the Middle Eastern character who'd come over after the Crusades or during the Crusades, I guess, because they were for a long. Who was mixed in with a band of merry men. It was gritty. It was dirty. There were people suffering from plagues and things like that. This is really the first time they'd ever talked about that in that period, and that's what was going on in Britain at the time.
Right.
Also, a lot of things with the Norman conquerors and the Anglo-Saxon settlers, as well as the original Britons, who they both kind of settled on their land after it was depopulated by the Justinian plague, things of that nature, and how these two things kind of helped form England, or what we think of as the UK. A lot of that goes in play. The show is it's very wonderfully shot. Again, it's shot on film. Um, I use a lot of lighting effects and things. It's beautiful. They researched the clothing of the period and time, so it's all really accurate. The weapons are really accurate. Some of the people not speaking English is very accurate because at the time they would have been speaking Middle English, which we wouldn't be able to understand anyway. But not everybody spoke Middle English at the time. Some people spoke other languages. Some people spoke Norman French. Some people still spoke Cymry or Welsh. And some people spoke Old English or Anglo-Saxon, which is mostly German. If you heard it spoken today, it sounded like someone speaking German, or maybe Dutch. So the two actors that played Robin Hood at the time, you got Michael Praed. Michael Praed played Robin of Locksley in the first two series. His merry men consisted of Will Scarlet, played by Ray Winstone, the great Ray Winstone, in basically one of his earliest roles. Little John was played by Clive Mantle. Friar Tuck was played by Phil Rose. Much was played by Peter Llewellyn. The Saracen Nasir was played by Mark Ryan, and Lady Marian was played by Judy Trott. He is also assisted by Herne the Hunter, played by John Albinieri. As the legend, Robin is posed by the Sheriff of Nottingham, played by Nicholas Grace, and Guy of Gisborne, played by Robert Addy, as well as the sheriff's brother, Abbot Hugo, played by Philip Jackson, representing all the greedy abbots in the legends. In the opening story, Robin Hood and the sorcerer, Robin and Much fall foul of the sheriff's henchman, Sir Guy of Gisborne, and are imprisoned in Nottingham Castle. They manage to escape. As a result of this action, Robin is declared a wolf's head, an outlaw by the authorities. Robin retreats to the woods and gathers a team of fellow rebels to fight back against the sheriff's authority. So Michael Prey decided he didn't want to do a third season, and so they kill him off. They actually kill the character right after he and Maid Marian get married, um, which just shocked a bunch of people. They thought it was going to be the end. Well, they come back for the third season um, with Robert of Huntington, played by Jason Connery. Uh, the conclusion of the and Jason Connery doesn't feel like he is, or I'm sorry, Robert of Huntington doesn't feel like he lives up to Robin of Locksley's mantle, but it's Hearn the Hunter that convinces him and all of the merry men to get behind him as the new Robin Hood. And Hearn the Hunter, they never really explain, is Hearn the Hunter a sorcerer, or is he actually, the ancient horned god of Britain? It's never really explained. He always appears in the mist and he disappears very quickly. So, at the conclusion of Series 3, Goldcrest was forced to pull out of the venture due to a downturn in the fortunes of their film arm. Goldcrest had been responsible for critical and commercial hits such as Chariots of Fire and Gandhi. They had a lean period with films Revolution and Absolute Beginnings, and the series was expensive to produce. So Goldcrest pulled out and then quickly folded up. What amazes me, I think they also had a hand in producing Amadeus too. So Goldcrest is riding this high wave, Chariots of Fire, Gandhi, Amadeus. And then they do this film, Revolutions, in 1985. And then this next film, which is a musical called Absolute Beginnings in 1986, which has David Bowie in it. It's really, really good. But, I can see why it wasn't everybody's cup of tea. So Goldcrest folds and they decide that they're not going to do a fourth season. But this was all going down while the third season is being produced. So they decided to just extend the third season out and give it the same number of episodes as the first two seasons. During the course of that third season, the new Robin discovers he is half brother of his nemesis Guy of Gisborne, and which was suggested by Carpenter, but the fact that both actors have blonde hair and they kind of look alike kind of added some scenes with the two of them in there. Carpenter had planned to have Guy discover this. That particular story arc was never resolved, as the show's intended fourth and final series was never made. Series 4 would have also featured the return of Baron de Bellame, and the sudden cancellation also broke off Robin and Marian's intended marriage and left Marian at Halstead Abbey as a novice. Carpenter later said that if he had known the third season would be his last, he would have went ahead and married Robert, the new Robin Hood, and Marian off. One of the villains was played by oh my God, Rocky Horror Picture Show, Richard
O'Brien.
Thank you, Richard O'Brien. Played this wizard who was working for this ancient Celtic god, who was given voice. And when the ancient Celtic god was defeated in the sorceress, he became a main antagonist, particularly in the third season. He is so great in this. I've included a couple of episodes with him in it in our playlist. I've included several episodes. You really get to see. I want to talk about Michael Prate's hair. I had that haircut for a while, even down to the small braids that came out behind the ears. I thought it was really cool. I really miss it. I was not cool. I was just geeky, but it was a nice haircut. I miss it. I miss my hair. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this. I miss my hair.
Stop shaving your hair.
Then I look like Picard, and I don't like that. It bothers me. but yeah, that's about it for Robin of Sherwood, also known as, like I said, known as Robin Hood over here. It it's really kind of wonderful, but it's quiet. It's one of those things. It's a real quiet series. I've included one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 episodes in our playlist. So you get a nice mix of both Michael Praed and Jason Connery, um, as well as some of the ideas um, with the sorcery and Herne the Hunter and things like that, because it really does kind of do a deep dive in the culture at the time and how it was changing in England in the you know 13th and 14th century.
Well, it's really interesting that Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, the Costner film,
Mm-hmm.
was based off this show. I didn't know it was
Yes.
based off a TV show, but it's interesting because number one, you talked about the costumes. That's one of the things that I do appreciate about Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. It
Mm-hmm.
shows the merry men. It's very dirty. I mean, they're
Yeah.
living out in the woods, so they're
Yes.
very
They're
dirty.
wolf's heads.
Except for Costner, of course, who's always very pristine.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also funny that Jason Connery was in that TV show because Sean Connery plays King Richard for a cameo appearance in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. So I think
Yes,
that's
he
interesting.
does. What's really interesting is, okay, so Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves is about Robin of Locksley, right?
Right, right.
They also England produced a Robin Hood film with Patrick Bergin, which is about Robert Hood, Earl of Huntingdon, at the same time.
Interesting.
Um, yes, and Don and I have always pointed out that the Robin Hood that was produced in England was far superior to the Robin Hood uh, Prince of Thieves. Honestly, I like both those films.
I like Prince of Thieves.
Yeah, I like both those films. Alan Rickman just tearing it up. I love
Right.
Alan Rickman in that. Uh, and uh, I liked them both, but honestly, they were making movies out of the TV series.
Hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, which was really really good. And well, I mean, it had a pretty big budget, especially for England, especially for that time. So it's really well put together. It's really well shot. A lot of soft lighting in the background, almost like they're shooting in a fog all the time. The costumes were beautiful. The weapons were perfect. Um, they also put these people through a lot of weapons training because a lot of the archery in it is top notch, which is not something you learn overnight.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Something you have to practice at. Um, and the music's beautiful. It's just a beautiful series, and it's one of those things that everybody was okay. I say everybody, a certain subset of nerds were all into, and then when it went away, they just kind of were like, "Meh,"
Yeah.
it's just gone forever.
Well, that's interesting. I appreciate you talking about another TV show. We as geeks and nerds, we do watch a lot of TV, a lot of movies, listen to a lot of music. So
Mm-hmm.
we like giving you the stuff that you may not know about. Hopefully, you'll check it out. So
Oh
awesome.
yeah,
Appreciate that.
thanks, sir.
With that, we'll take over on the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
So today I got my information off All That's Interesting, Wikipedia, Omerta, and Crime Scribe, and this is the story of Martha Place.
Martha Place.
So Martha Place brutally murdered her 17-year-old stepdaughter Ida with acid in 1898 and was executed by electric chair the following year. On March 20th,
Wow.
yeah, on March 20th, 1899, an unusual execution took place at the Sing Sing prison in New York. 11 men had been executed by the electric chair in the state, but on that day it was a woman who entered the execution chamber, a convicted murderer named Martha Place. On a fateful day, February 7th, 1898, the peaceful atmosphere inside a Brooklyn home was shattered by a violent argument between Martha and her husband, William. And what ensued was a sequence of events that would lead to a horrifying crime and an unprecedented execution method. Martha Place was the first woman to ever die by electric chair. She had been found guilty of brutally murdering her 17-year-old daughter, Ida. Following an argument, Martha had splashed acid into Ida's face and smothered her to death. But though many were satisfied that Place's sentence matched her crime, it posed some problems for her executioners. Used to dealing with men, they weren't sure how to work around Martha's long, thick hair or how to protect her modesty while attaching electrodes to her ankles. So this is the story of Martha Place, the Brooklyn murderess who became the first woman in history to be executed by the electric chair. Born on September 18th, 1849, Martha Mattie Gerritsen grew up in Millstone, New Jersey. Her life took a dark turn at age 23, however, when the Trentonian reports that a moving sleigh truck struck her in the head. Her brother later remarked that she never fully recovered from her injuries and that the accident left her mentally unstable. Martha's misfortunes soon seemed to pile up. Before relocating to New York, she lived in New Jersey working as a dressmaker. She married a man named Wesley Savacool and had a son, Ross Savacool. And though she married and had a son, her husband abandoned the family and later died. Martha was subsequently forced to give up her only child for adoption. Martha gave up the adoption to the Ossenbach family of Newark, who recently had lost a son, and they renamed him William. She eventually found work as a housekeeper in Brooklyn, where Martha worked for a widower named William Place. The two eventually married, making Martha the stepdaughter of William's young daughter, Ida, but marital bliss did not follow. According to Martha, William's relatives were hostile almost from the start, refusing to have anything to do with her. William also continually refused to allow her son to live with him. I'm not sure, since she gave him up for adoption, why he would, but anyway. William married Martha to help him raise his daughter, although it was later rumored that Martha was jealous of Ida. William called the police at least once after his wife threatened to kill Ida. The New York Times reported during Martha's July 1898 murder trial, quote, "She felt that her husband loved his daughter more than he did her, and her jealousy rapidly changed into hatred for the little girl. As the child grew into a pretty young woman and became more and more of a contrast to her, her hatred began to take active form." According to Martha, Ida was a constant problem. In Martha's view, Ida was sly, antagonistic, and disrespectful. She didn't appreciate anything Martha did, and in Ida's view, Martha couldn't do anything right. The more Martha tried to bring her to heel, the more Ida deliberately defied her. According to Martha, William continually indulged in Ida's rebellious behavior. Martha was also known as a martinet with a vicious temper. Things had to go her way, and anyone not towing her line usually suffered for it. Even her own brother admitted she had the worst temper he'd ever seen. Ida, as troubling teens often do, again made a point of defying her. And while perfectly normal for a teenager, especially a bereaved one, it was a mistake that would cost Ida her life. On the morning of February 7th, 1898, an argument broke out at the Place home in Brooklyn. And according to Amazing True Stories of Female Executions by Geoffrey Abbott, William and Martha fought, and Ida took her father's side. Amidst the rising tension during the argument, William abruptly stormed out, leaving a seething Marcia behind. Overwhelmed by anger and seeking solace or perhaps revenge, Martha turned to Ida. Martha later told police, according to the New York Times, quote, "His daughter sided with him as she usually did and slammed my face into the door of her room when I went to speak with her. That made me feel mad, so I got some acid from my husband's desk and threw it into her face."
Wow.
The corrosive liquid inflicted immense pain and disfigured the young girl irreversibly. Had she lived, Ida would have been both disfigured and totally blind, but she hadn't. Yet the horror didn't stop there. According to Martha, she then left to Ida's room, but an autopsy later suggested that Martha had continued the attack. While Ida writhed in pain, the doctor suspected that Martha had heaped bedding upon Ida and smothered her. Then Martha picked up an axe she found in the cellar and waited for her husband to come home. She later told police, quote, "I was afraid he was going to attack me. I took the axe upstairs with me. My husband came in afterwards and I struck him with it." William stumbled onto the street, bloodied and crying for help, and Martha fled to the kitchen and tried to kill herself by turning on the gas. William later told police, quote, "She came rushing down the stairs, and I saw too late that she carried an axe. I wanted to escape to warn my daughter not to enter the house, but as I tried to reach the front door, Martha struck me with the axe. Her eyes were cold with hate. She raised the axe again, and after that, I only knew agony and a kind of delirium." When the police arrived, they found Martha in critical condition. She was lying on the floor with clothes over her head, and gas from the burners was escaping into the room. It was then they discovered the lifeless body of Ida, her eyes disfigured from the acid attack and blood streaming from her mouth. The gruesome scene sent shockwaves to the community, leaving an indelible mark on their collective memory. Martha was then hospitalized and arrested. Both William and Martha were put at the hospital St. Mary's, and Martha recovered relatively quickly, but William lay in critical condition for days. Detectives only able to question him in short bursts. With his initial testimony concluded, William was given a 24-hour guard, and with Martha's rooms only 2 floors above her husband, they feared that she might try to finish her handiwork. It was during his recovery that they tried to inform him of Ida's murder by her stepfather. And still lying seriously ill on a sickbed, William immediately vowed revenge, saying, quote, "If she has killed Ida, nothing you can do to punish Martha will punish her enough." Soon after, the sensationalized trial of Martha Place began, and Martha proclaimed her innocence while awaiting trial. That July, journalists swarmed Martha's sensational murder trial and reported on every detail. The World noted, quote, "Her face is not pleasant. She looks like a woman who has spent most of her life fretting and worrying." The New York Times additionally described Martha as being stoic and having the kind of face that reminds one of a rat. Boy, we've covered several women murderers from this time period, and the press were just not kind to them.
No, they weren't. And it's, you would think, oh, it's just that Hearst yellow journalism that they were, so famous for. No. That's the New York Times. That's Pulitzer. That's not Hearst.
That's wild.
It's just, dude. No wonder that people had a hard time getting decent trials. People in the late 19th century were nuts.
Oh. Their report noted that her face didn't change during the murder trial except when William testified. Then, quote, her thin lips parted with a sardonic grin and she fixed her eyes upon him. Martha's cold and indifferent attitude did nothing to aid her case. To the jurors, she seemed exactly the sort of person to commit the crime she was being tried for. Despite hiring expensive lawyers, she managed to ruin their case with just 1 hour on the witness stand.
Wow.
Having previously claimed she had the axe in case William attacked her, she had told the court she used it only after extreme provocation, not in self-defense. Her throwing concentrated acid into Ida's face before smothering her was claimed Martha, also the result of extreme provocation. According to Martha, her victims were to blame for provoking her, and she hadn't thrown the acid intending to either disfigure or kill. What was she doing it for?
Mm-hmm.
Presumably, smothering Ida with the nearest available pillow wasn't with homicidal intent either.
Huh.
At the end of her trial, Martha was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. Her husband was the key witness against her, and the jury deemed her actions so heinous that they unanimously sentenced her to death.
Wow.
Her counsel soon reached out to the new governor of New York, Teddy Roosevelt, in the hopes of having her sentence commuted. But Roosevelt refused, saying, quote, "My sympathies in criminal cases are for the wronged and not the wrongdoer." I love Teddy Roosevelt. Martha's trial had been sensational enough, but her sentence even more so. After all, the electric chair was a relatively new method of execution, and until her sentencing, it had never been used on a woman before. By 1899, the electric chair had been used for 11 executions in New York. All the condemned had been men, starting with the convicted murderer William Kemmler. His execution on August 6, 1890 hadn't gone well. His executioner had to electrocute him twice before he died.
Ouch.
Since the electric chair had never been used on a woman, Martha allegedly believed she would be spared at the last minute. So she was shocked when Roosevelt refused to commute her sentence, but arose on the morning of her execution, quote, reasonably compromised per the Trentonian.
I'm a bad man. She was shocked he didn't, and then she was shocked later.
Yeah. Barring a miracle, Martha's place in criminal history and the electric chair were now firmly sealed. While passing the months, weeks, and days left her at Sing Sing's death house, Martha's behavior had been erratic. Her priest had done much to calm her, although she became hysterical on several occasions. And with the priest's ministrations and a course on Bible study, she had finally managed to calm down when her time came. On March 20th, 1899, she donned a black dress she had made for herself and made her way to the execution room. There, Place's gender created some obstacles for executioners, as we had talked about earlier. Her thick graying hair had to be clipped so the electrodes could be placed on her forehead, and her long skirt was slit so the electrodes could be placed on her ankles without exposing them. Those evil ankles.
Yes. Can't be looking at their ankles now.
Her demeanor in the death chamber was much the same as her trial, cold and indifferent. And strapped into place, Martha uttered her last words, quote, God help me, God have mercy. Then her executioner sent 1,760 volts of electricity through her body, and seconds later, Martha Place was dead at the age of 49 years old.
Wow.
The San Francisco Call noted in the coverage of Martha's execution, quote, the last woman condemned to die in this state went to the gallows shrieking and fighting, but Miss Place hardly uttered a sound. Martha ended up being buried in the family cemetery plot in East Millstone, New Jersey, without religious observations. Interestingly enough, Martha may have been the first woman to die by the electric chair, but she wouldn't be the last. She was the third to be sentenced by this method, the first two being serial killer Lizzie Halliday, who was an 1894 conviction commuted and sent to an asylum, and Maria Barbella, who was sentenced in 1895 but was acquitted the next year. Lizzie Halliday had been condemned on the 21st of June, 1894. Roswell Flowers commuted her sentence, sending her to the Mattawan State Hospital for the criminally insane. And Maria Barbella had been condemned in 1895 for slashing her lover's throat with a razor. Her first death sentence was overturned on appeal, and a retrial began on November of 1896. And sympathetic to her claims of having been raped by her abusive lover, the second jury acquitted her entirely, so she left the court a free woman. As time went on, the electric chair proved to be a popular method of execution in the United States. Of nearly 1,800 executions that took place between 1890 and 2010, 4,374 took place in the electric chair, dwarfing other methods. As such, Martha is more than just the Brooklyn murderess, the woman found guilty of killing her teenage daughter in a fit of rage and jealousy. As the first woman to die by the electric chair, she also makes up an important part of the history of capital punishment in the United States. Since Martha Place, New York executed very few women, and not all for murder, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Mary Farmer, Ruth Snyder, Anna Antonio, Eva Koo, Frances Creighton, Helen Fowler, Martha Beck, and Ethel Rosenberg rounded out the list.
Ethel Rosenberg is why.
Yep. Ethel Rosenberg entered the death chamber shortly after 8 p.m. on June 19th, 1953, when the wheel turned first full circle. She was convicted with husband Julius of passing atom bomb secrets to the Russians, and she died minutes after Julius amid worldwide attention. Her death wasn't as simple as Martha's, where Martha had died after her first jolt. The second jolt had been done just to make sure. Ethel required 5 to end her life.
Oh, Jesus. It's really sad. On further investigation, Julius, was guilty.
I've heard that.
Yeah, Ethel actually didn't do anything.
Yeah, I've heard that. That execution also ended the career of New York's fourth state electrician, Joseph Francel.
Mm-hmm.
Francel, dissatisfied with the pay and loathing the publicity, he resigned the next year after executing his 140th inmate.
Wow.
His place was taken by New York's last executioner, Dow Hover, who officiated at New York's last ever execution, that of armed robber and murderer Eddie Lee Mays on August 15, 1963. They haven't had an execution since. And that's the historical story of Martha Place.
Well, thank you for that, sir.
You bet. You bet. Hope you enjoyed that one.
I did.
With that, that will take us to the end of another week of our show. We appreciate each and every one of you listening. As always, you can find more information about what we talked about today on nerderymurdery.com. That's our hub with everything we've talked about. You can find links to what we talked about in the episode. Plus, you can find pictures that we show about the different topics. Plus, you can find the link to our YouTube, which Zig so often updates.
Thank you very much. Yes, there are several episodes of Robin of Sherwood in that YouTube list. So go ahead and check them out. They're actually pretty good quality as well.
Awesome. On our website, you can also find the link to our merchandise, where if you wish to show off your Nerdery and Murdery fandom, please do consider purchasing something there. That, along with our Patreon, our patrons do help with the cost of this show. We appreciate the donations that both our merchandise and our patrons do. There are costs that are involved with keeping us on the air, broadcasting our show, and keeping us going. So if you do like what you hear, please do consider becoming a patron or purchasing some merchandise from us.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. And last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our content that may be looking for the topics we talk about. So with that,
I have been Zig with your Nerdery.
and I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery.
Cue the music.